quiet rural landscape of Jackson County, Indiana, some stories are buried deeper than others. They linger in the soul and the memories of the people who lived there. And in the cold case files of the Sheriff's Department, this is a story about a fire, three teenage friends, and a mystery that would split a community and haunt a family for more than 50 years. In the dead of winter 1971, a remote cabin in Indiana burned to the ground. Inside the ashes, investigators found the remains of two teenagers, identified only by their class rings, but a third boy, 16-year-old Mike Sewell, who was supposed to be there, was gone. For the next 50 years, his family was haunted by a terrible question, as whispers in their small town grew louder. Was Mike a victim, or did he get away with murder? The answer, when it finally came, would be more shocking than anyone could have imagined. So what really happened at that cabin fire? And why did one family insist that the boy who was missing was never really missing at all? It was December 18th, 1971, just a week before Christmas, in Brownstown, Indiana. For a trio of high school friends, it was the perfect night for a getaway. The plan was simple. Head out to a makeshift cabin near the White River. Now, this wasn't some luxury retreat. It was a rough 9 by 15 foot shack the local kids had built themselves out of old railroad ties. It was their clubhouse, a place to be free from the eyes of adults, complete with a wood-burning stove to fight off the winter chill. The three friends were well known and well liked around Brownstown High. There was 19-year-old Jerry Autry, a star on the football team. There was 17-year-old Stanley Robinson, a member of the school's Christian Standards group. And then there was 16-year-old Mike Sewell, the vice president of his class. They were just good kids from a small town with their whole lives ahead of them. Other friends had been at the cabin earlier that evening. But as the night wore on, it was just Jerry, Stanley, and Mike left, planning to camp out till morning. But they would never see that morning. Sometime between 3 and 4 a.m., that secluded cabin was swallowed by a ferocious fire. By the time the flames were out and investigators arrived, there was almost nothing left. The structure was gone. Just ash and smoldering debris. The only things left standing were the sheet metal roof and the wood-burning stove. The scene was total devastation. And inside, they made a horrific discovery. Amidst the ruins, they found human remains. The fire had been so intense the bodies were described as nearly incinerated, making visual identification impossible. The coroner had to rely on other clues. Sifting through the ashes, they found two high school class rings. One belonged to Jerry Autry, the other to Stanley Robinson. Based on that evidence, the official conclusion was that two teenagers had died in the fire. Initial reports only mentioned two victims. But what about the third boy? What about Mike Sewell? In the immediate aftermath, there was just confusion. Witnesses confirmed Mike was supposed to be camping with his friends. Yet nobody was found. His ring wasn't there. And about 2 hours after the investigators had packed up and left, Mike's family officially reported him missing. He hadn't come home. He hadn't been seen or heard from. And just like that, a tragic accident twisted into something much more sinister. Mike, the boy who was at the cabin, had simply vanished. The question that would tear through Brownstown wasn't just how the fire started, but where on earth was Mike? In a small town where facts are scarce, rumors grow, and for the family of Mike, the whispers started almost immediately. With two boys dead and a third missing, the community drew the easiest and the most damning conclusion. Mike must have had something to do with it. Did he kill his friends? Did he set the fire to cover his tracks and then just run? That theory, baseless as it was, took root. Mike, a 16-year-old kid, was no longer seen as a possible victim. He was the prime suspect in a double murder. For his family, the nightmare was just beginning. His younger sister, Linda Pack, later recalled the torment. She said people she'd known her whole life would ask her, "Did you ever find out what happened to your brother?" Not with sympathy, but with suspicion in their voices. The pressure became so intense that the family eventually had to leave Brownstown. They were outcasts, their name forever tied to that horrific fire. Linda always said that those who truly knew her brother never believed he could do something so monstrous, but their voices were drowned out. The Sewell family was trapped. They were grieving a son they believed died in that fire. But they couldn't mourn him. They couldn't have a funeral. His mother, in her private grief, could only light candles next to his photograph. They had no body, no grave, and no closure. Just a cloud of accusation that followed them for decades. As the years turned into decades, then 2, then 5, the case went cold. The official cause of the fire was never determined. Mike still remains a missing person. His face on a file gathering dust. Every so often a rumor of a sighting would surface. A phantom glimpse of Mike in another state. But nothing ever panned out. For investigators, it seemed less and less likely that a teenager could vanish for 52 years without a single trace. But without proof, the official story stood. 2 boys dead and 1 missing. The case became a dark piece of local folklore. For the families of Stanley Robinson and Jerry Autry, there was the unending pain of their loss. For the Sewell family, there was the same pain, compounded by half a century of public shame. Linda Pack just wanted to know the truth before she died, never giving up hope that her brother's name could be cleared. But after 50 years, it seemed the truth had been buried in the ashes forever. The search for truth in cold cases often comes down to one person, refusing to let the story die. For the Sewell family, that refusal lasted over 50 years. If you find these stories of long sought justice compelling, take a moment to subscribe and hit that like button. It helps me make sure these important stories keep getting told. Now, let's get back to the unbelievable turn this case was about to take. Sometimes all a cold case needs is a fresh set of eyes. In 2022, more than 50 years after the fire, Jackson County Sheriff Rick Mayer decided it was time to take another look at the county's most infamous mystery. He assigned the case to Lieutenant Adam Nicholson, giving him the go-ahead to re-examine every report, every statement, and every rumor that had swirled for decades. Lieutenant Nicholson started digging. He went through the old files, the witness statements, and the sparse evidence from 1971. He looked at the old photos of the cabin's remains, just the metal roof and the stove in a sea of ash. Right from the start, something felt off. Lieutenant Nicholson later said that after reviewing everything, it just seemed logical to think that Mike had also died in the fire. His goal was simple. Other than the opinions of the original investigator, there was no proof Mike wasn't in the fire. Our focus is to prove he was or wasn't. The biggest problem was the lack of physical evidence. So Lieutenant Nicholson and his team came up with a bold plan. It was a long shot, but it was the only one they had. They would ask the Autry and Robertson families for permission to do the unthinkable, exhume the remains of their sons. The hope was that maybe, just maybe, evidence of a third person had been missed back in 1971 and unknowingly buried with the other 2 boys. With the family's brave consent, the exhumations took place in June of 2022. The 2 caskets were carefully raised from the ground at Fairview Cemetery and taken to the University of Indianapolis Human Identification Center. There, a team led by the renowned forensic anthropologist Dr. Krista Latham would begin the painstaking work of analysis. Forensic science had changed dramatically since 1971. Where a coroner once had only class rings, Dr. Latham had DNA extraction and advanced skeletal analysis. The team carefully opened the 2 caskets and began examining the fragmented, commingled remains. They started the slow, meticulous process of separating and analyzing extra Lantham's anthropological analysis confirmed, with scientific certainty, that the bone fragments in those two caskets didn't belong to two people. They belonged to three. Her report also stated there was no evidence of foul play on any of the bones. The damage was all consistent with a massive fire. After 51 years, there it is. Mike Sewell had been there all along. He didn't run away. He wasn't a killer. He was a victim just like his friends. His remains had been collected from the ashes in 1971, but with the limited technology of the time, they were simply never recognized as belonging to a third person, and were divided between the caskets of his two friends. For Lieutenant Nicholson, the moment he got Dr. Lantham's report was profound. He later called the feeling of delivering that news to Mike's sister Linda life-changing. After 51 years of wondering, of defending her brother, of living under a cloud of suspicion, Linda Pack finally had her answer. "I didn't really think I would ever know until I died," she said. "Now to finally know what they thought all along is true." While the Indiana State Police Lab was able to get a DNA match confirming Stanley Robinson's identity, the remaining fragments were too degraded by the fire for a conclusive DNA match to Mike. But for the family and for the investigators, the anthropological evidence was definitive. The boy who was declared missing was never missing at all. He died alongside his friends, and for half a century he rested with them in an unknown secret. In June of 2023, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office officially closed the cold case. Mike Sewell's status was changed from missing to resolved. The rumors that plagued a family and a town were nearly put to rest. The fire that took the lives of Jerry Autry and Stanley Robinson and Mike Sewell is still a tragedy, and the exact cause may never be known. But the mystery that grew from its ashes, the story of the boy who vanished, is finally over. It's a powerful story about a family's love, the dedication of investigators who won't give up, and the remarkable power of science to uncover a truth, even one buried for 50 years. Mike Sewell finally got the justice he deserved. His name was cleared, and his family, after a lifetime of waiting, could finally truly mourn.